Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. Today we're going to learn about Parsha Miketz. Now, Parsha Miketz is very exciting because we always read it on Chanukah. So what is the connection between the story of Yosaif and his brothers, Joseph and his brothers, and Chanukah? So first let's look into Hanukkah a little bit, and then we'll come back at the end after we talk about Yosaif. So Hanukkah it's a war of perception. And it's a difference of how the Greek Empire sees the world and how the Torah tells us how to see the world. So the Greek Empire, they only saw the physical world, and they didn't believe in anything they couldn't see. So their whole wisdom and culture was all based upon harnessing the power of the physical world, and it was purely a competition in the physical world, and there was nothing else. So there was the alpha who was the best, whoever was the strongest was the alpha, whoever was the smartest was the alpha, and then there's the beta and the gamma and the deltas. Who knows what the deltas are doing? But they saw this merely as a battle in the physical world, and there's nothing else. Now the Torah teaches us that Hashem, this infinite being who's created everything and guides everything, is behind all this, is behind the teva, behind nature. So the Torah calls Yavan, and the Greek Empire calls it choshek, darkness. And the greater revelation is that really there's an infinite being. So there is no competition between people. Everyone can connect to Hashem. Everyone can connect to the source of life, this infinite being. So there's infinite resources. There's infinite wisdom that could be acquired. Even though wealth is finite in some ways, but it's coming from an infinite source. So Hashem could give everyone, wealth. Everyone could have wisdom. Everyone could have strength. It doesn't have to be, it's not a finite amount. Hashem has no finite amount. So there's no battle of war for anything finite. The Torah sees that we can all connect to an infinite being. So during the wars against the Greek Empire, the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, they would win a war with very few soldiers against, great might, a mighty army of a Greek Empire. And a few soldiers could beat the many if we're attached to Hashem. If we're fighting with Hashem, if we're fighting connected with an infinite being, then the few can defeat the many. And so too, the miracle, the nace of Chanukah, the miracle of the lights, the menorah, so there's only oil to light for one day. So the week is 7 days. So the normal teva, nature, so if you only see the physical world, you only see 7. You see the natural world. But the nace, the miracle of Chanukah, is that it burned for 8 days. So it goes beyond nature, l'mayla min teva, and it goes into the supernatural. And it shows us, it gave a revelation that Hashem, this infinite being, is really the one running and guiding the world. And it's not just, this nature, this physical world that just randomly happens. Okay, so we're going to see all these battles of perception and the battle of the few against the many in the story of Yosaif and his brothers. So at first, in last week's Parsha, in Parsha Vayeshev, the Torah tells us, Toldos Yaakov Yosef. So the generations of Yaakov are Yosef. So what does it mean? So the Midrash tells us a lot of stories of how the life of Yaakov parallels exactly the life of Yosaif. And in appearance and perception, Yosef looked exactly like Yaakov. So more than the rest of the brothers, Yosef resembled Yaakov more closely. He resembled him. He had the perception, the appearance. When you looked at Yosef, you saw Yaakov. And he learned more. He sat more learning with his father. He gained more of the Matzorah, of handing down of the Torah. And the one who resembled Yaakov the most was Yosef. So then Yaakov gives Yosef, the special garment to show that he will be the Melech. And Hashem gives this chalom, his dream, but it was a higher level dream. It was closer to a nevuah, prophecy, where Hashem shows Yosef that the 11 sheaves of wheat, which represented his brothers, were bowing down to him, that he would be the Melech. And then it showed another dream, another nevuah, where the sun and the moon, representing his mother and father, and the 11 brothers of the stars, the 11 stars, were bowing down to him. So first in the physical world, he would be king, and in the ruchnius, in the spiritual world, he would be greater in Torah and mitzvos also. So the stars and the planets are the ruchnius, the spiritual, and the wheat is the physical world. Okay, so the brothers didn't perceive this. Hashem was giving nevuah to show that Yosef would be the king, and Yaakov gave a special garment to Yosaif, but the brothers didn't perceive him as king. and they perceived him as someone like a Yaakov. Someone as an Esav or a Yishmael, someone that was, that was part of the family, but rebelled against the Torah and the mitzvos, and rebelled against Hashem, and was trying to take things in the Chas V'Shalom the other direction. So they perceived Yosaif as, like a destroyer of the Torah and the mitzvos, as opposed to the reality that Joseph was more the embodiment, and he would become the first melech. He would become the first king. So then, they throw Yosef into the pit, and he's sold, to the Ishmaelim, and he's passed down, and he's sold to Potiphar in Mitzrayim and Egypt. And then in last week's Parsha, we begin to see the rise of Yosef. So at the beginning of this Parsha, Yosef is taken out of prison, and he's brought before Paro. He's brought before the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh is given a dream also, another Chalom. So we see, once again, dreams, visions, prophecies of what's going to happen in the future. And this is all coming outside of the physical world. It's coming from Hashem, the infinite source, who's revealing from outside of time and space. Hashem has created all the time and space, and he's revealing things greater than we can perceive in the physical world. So then Paro has a vision. It's interesting because his first dream is of Sheva Paros Yefos Moreh Uvrios. So he sees 7 cows, and it's interesting. They're described as beautiful in appearance and healthy. Barios Basar, healthy, flesh. And they were grazing in the swamp. But then he sees the 7 the 7 other cows, and they were Ra'os Moreh, and these were Paros Acheros, other cows from the Sitra Acher, the other side, the side opposed the Kedusha. So this was the other side, the side of Kedusha, of holiness, of the Torah and the mitzvahs, and there's the other side against it, the Sitra Achra, the other side. So these cows were the other cows, and they had Ra'os Moreh, poor appearance or evil appearance, Vidakos Basar, and the thin flesh. And they, and they stood next to the cows on the bank of the Nile River. And the cows of poor appearance and thin flesh, they ate the 7 cows of beautiful appearance and the healthy cows. And then Paro woke. So here we have the word, the kates. So it starts mi kates from the end. So kates can mean end. And then here, vayikatz Paro, it can mean awake. So kates can mean either, the end of something or awakening. So we see that Chazal tells us that the kates, it's the kates of Choshek. The Chanukah is the kates of Choshek. It's the end of darkness. And it's an awakening to the Geula. It's an awakening to the revelation that Hashem is the one really running the world. That Hashem's the Melech Malachim. He's the King of Kings. He's the Melech HaOlam, the King of the universe. So really that Hashem, we don't always perceive it, but Hashem, the infinite being, is really running everything. So then he goes on to have another vision of the wheat, and and basically, it's similar. It's like the wheat is, there's good wheat, and then good and healthy wheat, and then there's the wheat that's like struck by the east wind, and it's thin and it's not healthy. So Yosef goes to interpret the dream to Paro, to Pharaoh, and he tells him what Hashem is telling him is that there's going to be these 7 years of plenty. There's 7 years of great crops, and that Yosef's idea is to store up through these 7 years, store up those crops, because then they'll be followed by 7 years of famine. 7 years, and basically the bounty, the bracha, the blessing of Hashem in the 7 years is when we're connected to Hashem, and the flow, we're connected to Hashem, and the flow from Hashem, the bracha comes into the world. And the years of famine is when we're cut off from Hashem. We're cut off from that infinite source of life. And then everything stops growing, and we have this famine. So Yosef's plan was to store up in those times of bracha, those times of plenty, for the times of the famine. And Paro sees a great wisdom in Yosef, and he appoints him to be viceroy. He appoints him, basically, he says, only my throne, you'll have all the powers of a melech, of a king, and only the throne will separate, only the throne will make me higher. Only the fact that I sit on the throne of Mitzrayim, the throne of Egypt, of this vast Egyptian empire. But in essence, Yosef was elevated to be a king. He was elevated to be the melech. And it's interesting because Paro describes him by this name. He gives him a name, Safnat Paneach. Rashi tells us his name means Mefaresh Hatzafunos. It's someone that explains the hidden. Here it says a decipherer of the cryptic. It's someone that's explaining the hidden. And Yosaif knew how to interpret these dreams. He knew how to take these messages from Hashem and explain them to people what Hashem was communicating. So Hashem, this infinite being, is communicating greater wisdom into the world. And through the darkness of dreams and sleep, Yosaif was bringing greater light and understanding and wisdom into the world. And Paro saw it. Paro saw the wisdom that Yosaif was bringing. Even before the brothers see it, Paro saw it and gave him this name. So then, the brothers, when the famine starts, so Yosaif is appointed as the viceroy, and they stored up, the grain and the food. And then soon all the gold and silver of the world during the years of famine begins to pour into Egypt, pours into the treasure houses of Egypt. And we even see that it's very strange that Yosaif goes to all the Egyptians during the famine and makes them pay, and only exempts the priest class of the Egyptians. And we're going to see later then this is repaid by the Levium, the tribe of Levi, during the days of slavery in Egypt. They're exempt from the slavery. So Yosaif arranges that the brothers come down and they pay money for the food to take back, and he arranges that he has the servants put the money back into their bags, and his goal is to get them to bring Binyamin down. And what he wants to do is he wants to test the brothers, because Yosaif and Binyamin, Joseph and Benjamin, they were both sons of Rachel. Their mother was Rachel, and they were the only two sons of Rachel. So Yosaif wanted to test the brothers if they would do teshuvah, if they would feel bad about what they did to Yosaif, and do teshuvah and return to Hashem and do right and fight for Binyamin. So it's interesting. So Mitzrayim, Egypt was known. They were known for their sorcery and magic. And Yosaif pretends here, and he makes a suda. He makes a table. He sets a table and he invites all the brothers. And he lifts this Gavia HaKesef, this silver goblet. And he says, this is my magic silver goblet. And he pretends to do tricks with it. He smells it. He says, the cup tells me, he called out, that Yehuda will be seated at the head of the table. Because he is a melech, he is a king, and the king belongs in the front. Reuven, he will be next because he is the Bechor, he is the firstborn. And then Yosef places them all correctly in their position, seating the sons of one mother at the same table. And when he reaches Binyamin, he says, he has no mother, and I have no mother, let him sit next to me. And the brothers could not but wonder while they ate and drank with the Egyptian ruler. They trembled in their hearts because they did not understand the meaning of it all. So it's really fascinating because when everyone was in Eretz Yisrael, the brothers couldn't perceive, they didn't have the perception that Yosef was going to be the Melech, he was going to be the king. And here, when they get down to Mitzrayim, when they get down to Egypt, and Yosef is elevated, and he is this viceroy, and he's dressed in these royal garments, and he's seated on a throne in a position of authority, they can't even perceive anymore that he's their brother. And even when he's playing this game and he's pretending that he has this magic cup, of course, now how does Yosef know who all the brothers are and who their mothers are? Because he's their brother. But he's pretending to be this sorcerer, this magician. And the brothers can't perceive it. And we're going to see next week's parsha, we're going to see the elevation, the confrontation of Yehuda, the Melech, against Yosef, the Melech. And this is going to parallel Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. And we'll talk about that next week's parsha. But here we're on the brink of the brothers, of the revelation that everything that happened, even the 10 brothers against the one brother, because Yosef is the one more closely following in Hashem's path, in the Derech Hashem, and the path of the Torah and the mitzvos. And the brothers didn't perceive that Yosef's path was the true path. It was the straighter path to Hashem. And they were also, learning Torah and doing mitzvos, but they didn't see that their paths, they didn't see that the path that Hashem wanted to follow was Yosef's path. So even these 10 brothers, the many, cannot defeat the one who's attached to Hashem. Because when it's Hashem's ratzon, when it's Hashem's will, when it's what Hashem wants, so the brothers couldn't see. The brothers didn't understand. So the brothers threw Yosef in the pit and they sold him into slavery. And they didn't see, Yosef becoming elevated in Mitzrayim. And they get there and they see this king, this authority figure, this viceroy of Egypt, and they didn't even recognize him as their brother anymore. And even when he's telling them personal information, he's like, oh, my silver goblet tells me, all this personal information about our family. They still couldn't perceive it. But what's going to happen is, in next Parsha, when they fight for Binyamin, when they do Teshuvah, and then they're going to return to the path that Hashem wants them on, and then they're going to be able to see the revelation. But this is the power of Chanukah. There's this ruchnius, there's this koach of ruchnius, this spiritual power during these 8 days of Chanukah. And it didn't happen because the Hashmonayim, because the Maccabees, did this thousands of years ago, that there's a spiritual power. Hashem created these 8 days with a special spiritual power to go above the Teva, to perceive, to see something greater than the physical world. And that's how the Hashmonayim, that's how the Maccabees defeated the Greek Empire, because they used this spiritual power of perception. And this is the perception that Yosaif had. And he could interpret these dreams. And Yosaif had this spiritual power of perception. It raised him up to the position of king. And then the brothers, when they do the Teshuvah, they're going to get back and they're going to see this perception. But the Maccabees had this perception of the spiritual power. And that's how we defeated, the Greek Empire in all these wars, where we were few and they were many, and a many mighty army. And we can use the spiritual power of Chanukah that we're in now, and we can use it to perceive the world and to see that the world, there's something greater than the physical world. There's higher levels of ruchnius, of spiritual worlds, connecting us to Hashem, this infinite being. And through that, we can harness the supernatural. We can go beyond 7, beyond the normal natural weekday world, into an 8, into something greater, into the power of 8, the power of the supernatural. And that's the koach, that's the power of Chanukah. So may we all, by staring, and through the 8 days, we light 36 neiros. And that reattaches us, it lets us glimpse into a little bit of the oreganos, the hidden light that Hashem originally created in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. And Adam and Chava got to perceive these 36 hours of this Or Haganos, this special light. And this light is what we start to tap into with Chanukah. And Bezrat Hashem, when we see the coming of Mashiach ben Yosef and the coming of Mashiach ben David, they will teach us to perceive even greater of Hashem in the world. And we can see this by learning Torah. We can see this by doing the mitzvahs. And we can see this by acts of kindness. And may we all be blessed during these 8 days of Hanukkah to look into those beautiful neiros, look into those beautiful candles of Hanukkah, and perceive that there is Hashem, that loves us and is guiding the world. And there's nothing to fear, and the good can always defeat evil. So have a Chanukah Sameach. I hope you have a great Shabbos for Parsha Miketz, and I hope to see you soon on Sweet and Good Torah. Thank you.